Has this ever happened to you? You're sitting at a stoplight, minding your own business, and your car's engine just sputters and dies for no reason? It's so frustrating, right? Well, today we're going to get to the bottom of it. We are going to be talking all about the idle air control valve and how you can figure out if it's bad and maybe even fix it yourself. All right, let's just jump right in. It's a situation that makes any driver's heart sink. You pull up to a red light, you take your foot off the gas, and suddenly the engine starts shaking, the RPMs go haywire, or it just quits. So what in the world is going on when your car can't even handle sitting still? So, the first step in playing detective here is just recognizing the symptoms. The problem pretty much always shows itself as an unstable, really erratic idle, which is just the fancy term for how your engine is behaving when you're not on the gas. Let's see if any of this sounds familiar, okay? Is your RPM needle on the dashboard just jumping all over the place? Well, that's called an idle surge. Or maybe your engine just totally gives up the ghost the second you come to a stop. Or, hey, maybe you have to give it a little bit of gas just to get the thing started in the first place. If you're nodding your head right now, you are seeing the classic signs that your car's idle control system is, well, crying for help. So what is this little mystery part that's causing all this chaos? It's time to meet the component that's supposed to keep your engine running smoothly when you're not moving. The idle air control valve. Most people just call it the IAC valve. So here's the deal. When your foot's off the gas pedal, the main air intake for the engine, the throttle plate, is completely shut. But obviously the engine still needs some air to run, right? Well, the IAC valve is basically a little bypass, a secret passageway for air. It's a tiny computer-controlled gate that lets in just a precise little trickle of air, just enough to keep the engine humming along nice and steady at idle. Now, a quick heads up, not every single car has one of these. A lot of newer vehicles use what's called an electronic throttle body. So instead of having a separate little valve for idling, the car's computer just ever so slightly cracks open the main throttle plate to let air in. So, if you have a newer car, you might be chasing a different problem. But for tons of vehicles still out on the road, the IAC is the key player here. A failing IAC valve doesn't just die quietly. It leaves a very specific trail of breadcrumbs for you to follow. If you know what to look for, the car will practically tell you exactly what's wrong. So the biggest clues are usually one of these things. A check engine light, that's the obvious one, of course. Then you've got that crazy idle speed, the stalling at stoplights, and sometimes you might even get a backfire. But here is the real kicker, the single most important clue of them all. All these problems seem to just vanish the second you touch the gas pedal. And if that check engine light is on, plugging in a simple code scanner is going to give you the smoking gun. More often than not, you'll see the code P0505. And what does that mean? Idle control system malfunction. Yeah, it doesn't get much more direct than that, pointing you right at the IAC system. This right here, this is the absolute key to figuring this whole thing out. I mean, think about it for a second. Why does everything suddenly run perfectly the moment you press the accelerator? Well, it's because when you hit the gas, the main throttle plate opens up, and the engine gets all the air it needs. The IAC valve's job is over. The fact that the problem only happens at idle is what makes that IAC valve our number one suspect. Okay, so you're pretty sure the IAC valve is the culprit. But before you run out and buy a new one, hold on. Let's talk about how you can confirm it with a couple of really simple tests you can do right in your own driveway. All right, here's a classic old-school mechanics trick, and you'd be surprised how often it works. First, you gotta find the IAC valve. It's that little metal part usually bolted right onto the throttle body. Get the engine running and idling, then just give the valve a few firm taps with the plastic handle of a screwdriver. If the idle suddenly changes, maybe it smooths right out, or maybe it stalls completely, that's a huge sign that the valve is physically getting stuck inside. But a quick word of caution. There is one other thing that can act almost exactly like a bad IAC valve, and that's a vacuum leak. If there's a cracked hose somewhere letting extra unmetered air into the engine, it'll throw the idle all out of whack. So while the IAC is usually the prime suspect, just remember that a full diagnosis is always the best way to go. So what's the fix? Well, here's the good news. In a surprising number of cases, you might not even need to replace the valve at all. The real culprit isn't a broken part, it's just plain old dirt. This right here is the root of the problem 9 times out of 10. Over thousands of miles, engine gunk, it's basically sticky carbon, builds up all over the moving parts of the valve. It coats this little plunger thing, which is called a pintle, and it clogs up the air passages, and eventually it just gets so gummed up that the valve can't move freely anymore. It is literally stuck. Luckily, the fix is often as simple as a good cleaning. You just have to remove the valve. It's usually only held on by 2 little bolts. The key here is to be really thorough. Get a can of throttle body cleaner and a small brush and just scrub all that black carbon gunk off the plunger. And hey, don't forget to clean out the port where the valve sits on the throttle body too. A lot of junk builds up right in there. Once it's all shiny again, just bolt it back on.
Okay, super important tip here. Don't panic when you start the car for the first time after you've cleaned it. It is probably going to run rough, maybe even smoke a little bit. This is 100% normal. The engine just needs a couple of minutes to burn off all the leftover cleaning fluid that got sucked into the intake. After that, it should settle right down into a nice, smooth idle.
So, what's the big takeaway? A really good cleaning will very often solve the problem completely. But if you've cleaned it spotless and the idle is still all over the place, well, you've actually learned something really important. The problem isn't just gunk anymore. It's likely an electrical failure inside the valve's little motor. And at that point, yeah, replacement is your only real option. So is your car's rough idle a simple 10-minute cleaning job, or is it a sign of a totally failed part? Now you actually know how to figure it out.